The phone rang at 2:13 in the morning. Not a gentle ring. Not the kind you ignore and call back later. The kind that claws through silence and lands straight in your chest. Emily Harper woke instantly, heart pounding before she even reached for the nightstand. Her apartment was dark except for the pale glow of the city lights slipping through the blinds. Beside her bed, an unfinished cup of tea sat cold from hours earlier, forgotten after another long shift at the community center. She almost didn't answer. Almost. Because at 38, Emily had learned something painful. People rarely called in the middle of the night to bring good news. Hello? A pause. Then a voice she hadn't heard in over 3 years. Is this Emily Harper? Her stomach tightened. Yes. This is Mercy General Hospital. We found your number listed as an emergency contact for Daniel Harper. For a second, she forgot how to breathe. Daniel, her ex-husband. The man who had broken her heart so thoroughly she once thought it might never heal. He collapsed, the nurse said gently. Heart-related complications. He's conscious now, but asking for you. Emily sat frozen. Outside, rain tapped softly against the window. 3 years. 3 years since the divorce papers. 3 years since sleepless nights, unanswered apologies, resentment buried under forced smiles. 3 years since Daniel walked away, not because he stopped loving her, but because grief had turned him into someone neither of them recognized. After their little boy, Noah, died in a car accident at 7 years old. Their marriage slowly unraveled under sorrow too heavy for 2 exhausted people to carry. Emily grieved by holding tighter. Daniel grieved by disappearing. Eventually, silence replaced love. Then lawyers replaced conversations. And now, he asked for me? She whispered. Yes. The nurse hesitated. There's no one else here. Something inside her shifted. Not forgiveness. Not yet. Something quieter. Sadness. Because no matter what happened between them, nobody deserved to collapse alone. 40 minutes later, Emily pushed through the hospital doors, rainwater dripping from her coat. The smell hit instantly. Sterile air, coffee, exhaustion. A tired receptionist glanced up. Family of Daniel Harper? Emily paused at the word family. Her chest pinched. Yes. The woman pointed upstairs. He's in observation. Room 407. Emily stepped into the elevator feeling suddenly absurd. Why am I here? He hurt you. He left. He stopped trying. But memory answered faster than anger. Daniel teaching Noah baseball. Daniel staying awake through fevers. Daniel crying silently after the funeral when he thought nobody could see him. Pain had ruined many things. But pain did not erase humanity. Room 407 stood half open. She entered quietly and stopped. Daniel looked older, far older than 42. His once broad shoulders looked thinner, exhausted. Gray touched the edges of his dark hair. Machines beeped softly beside him. For a moment, she didn't recognize the man lying there. Then he turned. Their eyes met, and something fragile cracked open between them. You came, he whispered. His voice sounded small. Emily swallowed hard. Of course I came. His eyes watered instantly. That nearly broke her, because Daniel Harper had never cried easily. Not even at Noah's funeral. Yet here he looked terrified. Ashamed. Human. I didn't think you would, he admitted. Emily pulled a chair closer. You collapsed. A humorless laugh escaped him. Apparently my heart finally filed a complaint. She almost smiled. Almost. Silence settled between them. Uncomfortable. Familiar. Heavy with years they didn't know how to discuss. Finally, Emily looked around. No family? Daniel looked toward the ceiling. My sister's in Seattle. Friends had disappeared after the divorce. Co-workers only knew enough to send texts. Truthfully, he had become isolated. Lonely? The kind of lonely people hide behind "I'm fine." Emily suddenly noticed something heartbreaking. No flowers. No overnight bag. No one sitting in the visitor chair. Just him, completely alone. Something tightened painfully in her chest. You should have called someone, she said quietly. I did. His eyes met hers. You! The room went still. Emily looked away first. The next morning she stayed. Not because she had planned to, not because everything was magically forgiven, but because kindness sometimes arrives before understanding. She brought him water when nurses forgot, argued with cafeteria staff until he got edible food, texted his landlord when she discovered overdue paperwork sitting, unanswered on his phone. By afternoon, doctors delivered bad news. Stress-induced cardiac complications. Not fatal, but serious. "You've been neglecting yourself," the doctor said. Daniel stared silently. Emily crossed her arms. "No kidding?" The doctor continued. "He'll need support for recovery." Support. The word lingered awkwardly. Daniel laughed bitterly. "Well, I'm screwed." Emily glanced at him. Something flickered inside her. Not obligation, compassion, because she suddenly saw something she hadn't before. The man she divorced hadn't become cruel. He had become broken. And broken people often make terrible decisions. That didn't erase hurt, but it explained some of it. Days passed. Emily kept returning. After work, before work, even during lunch breaks. The nurses noticed. "You're a good wife," one of them said warmly. Emily blinked. "Oh, we're divorced." The nurse looked startled, then confused. "You still come every day?" Emily looked through the window where Daniel slept. Someone should. Word quietly spread around the floor. The ex-wife who stayed. The woman who brought books. The woman who remembered coffee orders. The woman who sat beside a man who once walked away. Nobody quite understood it, including Emily, until Thursday night. Daniel woke shaking. Panic attack. Sweat drenched his shirt. "I saw Noah," he whispered hoarsely. "In my dream." Emily sat beside him instantly. For years they had avoided saying their son's name together. Too painful, too dangerous. Now suddenly it sat between them again. Real, alive in memory. Daniel buried his face in trembling hands. "I failed him." Emily's throat tightened. "No, I should have driven that day." "You know that's not true." "I left you after," he choked out. "God, Em, I abandoned you." Tears slipped down his face. "I hated myself so much I couldn't breathe. Every time I looked at you, I saw what I ruined." Emily stared. 3 years. 3 years of anger. And suddenly she understood something devastating. He had not stopped loving her. He had stopped surviving. Grief swallowed him whole. She reached for his hand before thinking. "You hurt me," she said softly. "I know. I hated you for leaving." "You should have." Her voice trembled. "But I never stopped worrying." That shattered him. Daniel cried harder than she had ever seen. No defenses, no pride, just grief. The kind people bury until it poisons them. Emily stayed until sunrise. Not speaking much, just sitting there. Because sometimes healing begins when someone refuses to leave. A week later, discharge day arrived. A social worker frowned at paperwork. "You'll need someone home with you initially." Daniel looked embarrassed. "I'll figure it out." Emily glanced over, then sighed. "You can stay in the guest room?" His head snapped up. "What?" "Temporary," she added quickly. "Emily, you nearly died." His voice cracked. "You'd really do that?" She shrugged lightly. "Don't make it weird." He laughed for the first time in years. A real laugh. At her apartment, recovery became unexpectedly human. Messy, awkward, quiet. Daniel washed dishes without being asked. Emily pretended not to notice. Sometimes grief still crept in unexpectedly. Noah's old baseball glove in storage, songs they couldn't finish listening to. But instead of running this time, they talked. Slowly, painfully, honestly. One evening, Emily came home exhausted after work to find dinner waiting. Burnt chicken. Terrible pasta. Daniel looked nervous. "I forgot how to cook." She laughed so suddenly she startled herself. Actual laughter. Warm. Unplanned! And for a second, the apartment didn't feel haunted anymore. Weeks passed. Then one Saturday morning, Emily found him sitting on the floor crying quietly. Noah's photo album lay open. Daniel looked ashamed. "Sorry." She sat beside him. No apologizing. Together they turned pages. School pictures, birthday cake disasters, tiny baseball uniforms, memories that once destroyed them somehow softened around the edges. At sunset, Daniel spoke quietly. "You saved me." Emily shook her head. "No." "Yes." He looked at her carefully. "When everyone disappeared, you came." She thought for a long moment, then smiled sadly. "I came because kindness matters." His eyes filled again. Even now. Especially now, months later, Daniel stood healthier, steadier. volunteering beside Emily at the community center every Saturday. Not because life magically repaired itself, not because heartbreak vanished, but because people can choose gentleness after devastation. And sometimes love changes shape before it returns. One snowy December evening, a volunteer quietly asked Emily something everyone secretly wondered. "Why did you go to the hospital after everything?" Emily looked across the room. Daniel was helping an elderly man zip his coat, smiling patiently. She thought about pain, about loss, about anger, about midnight phone calls. Then she answered softly, "Because being hurt doesn't mean you stop being human." Across the room, Daniel looked up and smiled at her. The kind of smile that says, "Thank you for staying." The kind built slowly from second chances. Emily smiled back. And for the first time in years, grief no longer felt like the loudest thing in the room. Kindness was